So now we're going to talk about higher order components. So one thing, actually here we can see the problem in our last exercise. So if we look at the usage here, there are, like, for example, this subtitle or this, like, lots of these different places that need to use the toggle consumer. You wind up nesting a fair amount, and you're kind of repeating yourself in some places. So higher order components came after mixins, which was like an older React concept as a way to share code. There are some limitations to them, but in general, they're pretty useful. And a useful mechanism for reducing or sharing code. And especially in the case where it's like a lot of the same, you're seeing the same stuff, okay, toggle consumer, toggle on. And we're doing something very similar in this subtitle here as well. And so wouldn't it be nice if we could, oh, well, this is totally contrived, but what this could look like is const subtitle equals with toggle, and then this is just a thing that accepts toggle as a prop, and then renders this thing. Well, yeah, I made it. I should have had another one of these here. Let me add another one. The contrived example is there just for me to be able to test that you did things properly. Good example of this would be this thing. So we'd have const switch text equals with toggle. And then instead of all this toggle consumer nonsense, we actually just provide the consumer function. There we go. And I got to figure out my parentheses. There we go. I just keep on going until Prettier starts applying its niceness. But yeah, so that, like, we can see the difference here. Function switch text to. There we go. So that, like, you compare the two of these, and yeah, okay, I can kind of see a case where this seems a little bit over the top compared to a higher order component version of this. This is only like one example that applies to our what we've currently worked through. You could have a lot of different cases where you have this function that gives you a component back that applies a lot of different things on top of it. React Redux, React Router, all of these have these higher order components that do some extra work and give you a function that, or a component that will manage that extra work for you. And so you save on a fair amount of code. The difference is, difference between render props and higher order components is that with a render prop, you get back a component. With a higher order component, you get back a component. And so you have to, like, that happens statically at like, when your app boots up. It's creating all these components, and then you render those components. With render props, all of this happens at render time, which gives you like a ton more flexibility on like whether or not you're applying certain props and things of that nature. And so this is why we're going to build our higher order component on top of our render prop, which actually incidentally is going to be the toggle consumer, which will be implementing the render prop. But yeah, like every single time you can do anything you can do with a higher order component with a render prop component. But sometimes the higher order component can kind of provide a nicer API for what the code you're trying to share. And so by building a React prop component first, and then building a higher order component on top of that, you can provide both. So you say, here's the higher order component if you want the simpler, nicer, smaller API. But if you really need the flexibility, the render prop is what this is built on anyway, so you just use that directly. So yeah, I can't imagine a situation where you'd want to have a higher order component that wasn't under the hood implemented as a render prop. It's too easy. Okay, so your task, the whole thing lives inside this with toggle function. And it's all spelled out for you, the steps that you have to take. And there's one thing that will be new to you, probably. It's this React Forward Ref that's new to React in general. So I put some links in there. If you get stuck for more than like 30 seconds, just look at the solution to reference it really quick and come back and go through it. Don't spend too much time on that.